The price gun jams every time the roll runs low. You learn to feel it coming. A little hitch in the trigger, then nothing. I was 3 rows into the clearance bulbs when the lights flickered. Just once. The whole ceiling of Hartley stuttered, the way it does in October when the heater kicks on and the building remembers it's old. Nobody else looked up. They never do. I peeled the new tag off the gun and pressed it over the old one. $2.99 down to $1.49. Daffodils, mostly. The ones nobody wants because they bloom too early and break your heart in March. That's the job. You mark down what didn't sell and you make room for what might. My name is Nathan. I'm 35. I have been doing this for 15 years. I want to say that again so it lands as strange for you as it does for me. 15 years in the same store, the same county, the same parking lot where I learned to drive a forklift one summer and then somehow never left. People ask where you see yourself in 5 years like it's a normal thing to know. I always wanted to laugh at that. I see myself right here, marking down bulbs, feeling the trigger hitch. I'm the floor lead, which sounds like more than it is. It means I open 3 mornings a week. It means I know which register eats nickels. It means when a customer can't find the right size washer, somebody points them at me, and I walk them back to aisle 9 and I find it, because I know exactly where it is. I'm good at this. I want to be honest about that part. I'm not bitter about being good at something small. Or I told myself I wasn't. The bulb section sits near the front, by the windows, so I get the weather all day. That morning it was the gray kind. Not raining yet. Just thinking about it. The kind of sky that makes the garden center look like a photograph of itself. I like the garden center most of all. Don't tell anyone. Behind me, 2 of the part-timers were talking by the seed rack. Kayla and the new kid whose name I kept forgetting. They thought they were quiet. They weren't. She closed 2 of them, Kayla said, up north. Just walked in and shut them down. I kept my eyes on the gun, but my hands slowed. 2 whole stores. That's what they do. Corporate sends somebody. They call it a turnaround. It's not a turnaround. The new kid said something I couldn't hear. It means she's the closer, Kayla said. She comes in, she looks at the numbers, and then it's done. Boxes in the back by spring. I set the gun down on the shelf, slow, careful, the way you put down something you might throw. I had heard the name already. Everyone had. It had come down through the building the way these things do, sideways, half a fact at a time. A new manager, sent from the regional office, somebody named Dana. By the time it reached me, it had grown teeth. She fired a man on his first day. She made a cashier cry over a cash drawer. She had a spreadsheet with all our names on it and a column that said keep or cut. I didn't believe all of it. You learn not to. A store is a small town, and a small town makes monsters out of weather reports. But I believed enough. Because I knew the numbers too. I'm the floor lead. I see the Sunday reports. I see the foot traffic, which used to be a river and is now a creek. I see the new chain store out on the highway, with its 40 registers and its parking lot the size of a runway. I'd watched it happen one Saturday at a time. The aisles that used to need 2 people now needed none. Frank from plumbing took a buyout in the spring, and nobody filled his spot. We just learned to walk a little faster and pretend the gaps weren't there. You can love a place and still feel it going quiet under your feet. I knew Hartley's was sick. I just didn't want a stranger to be the one who said it out loud. I stood there with my hands not quite working, and did the math I'd been avoiding for a year. I had built my whole quiet life inside a building that was dying, painted the seasonal signs, learned every customer's name, stayed when the smarter people left for the highway, and now a stranger was driving in to read the cause of death off a printout. So no, I wasn't feeling generous about a woman named Dana. The owner found me an hour later by the registers. Mr. Hartley, real Hartley, grandson of the original, which makes him about as far from the founder as I am from being anyone important. He's 70 now. He moves like the floor is colder than it is. He still wears a tie to a hardware store, which I have always loved him a little for. Nathan. He had his reading glasses pushed up on his head, where they live. Walk with me a second. We walked. Past the paint mixer that hums, past the rope by the foot, out toward the back where the dock is, where it smells like cardboard and cold concrete and faintly, like the soil bags we stack by the door. You've heard, he said. It wasn't a question. I've heard some things, probably wrong things, most of them. He almost smiled. Most of them are wrong. Some of them won't be. I waited. He's a waiter, Mr. Hartley. He makes you sit in it. Corporate's sending a manager, he said. You know this. Her name is Dana Reyes. She's good at what she does. He said it carefully, like the word good was a stone he was placing in a wall. What she does is figure out whether a place like this can live. And if it can't, Then she helps it close with dignity instead of bleeding for 2 more years. He looked out at the dock. I'm too old to pretend that's not a mercy. I didn't say anything. There's a kind of quiet that's an argument. He knew I was making it. I need you to do something for me, he said, and you're going to hate it. I usually do when you start like that. I want you to shadow her. I turned to look at him. 2 weeks, he said. Wherever she goes in this store, you go. She'll want to learn how the place actually runs, not how the binder says it runs. You're the only one who knows the difference. He paused. And I need someone in those rooms who loves this place. Not to fight her, just to be there, so she remembers it's not a spreadsheet. I should tell you what I felt, but feelings are cheap when you describe them. So I'll tell you what I did instead. I looked at the soil bags. There were 38 of them. I had counted them that morning out of habit. I looked at the 38 bags, and I thought about the part of my chest that had gone tight and stayed that way since the word closer. You're asking me to help the person who's going to shut us down, I said. I'm asking you to walk beside her, he said. What she decides is hers. Whether she sees us clearly first, that part might be yours. He pushed his glasses down onto his nose then, which was how I knew the conversation was over. He's a good man. Good men hand you the worst jobs and call it trust. I spent the next 2 weeks getting ready to dislike her properly. I cleaned up my section, squared the shelves, updated the counts so the numbers I'd hand her would be honest, because if she was going to gut us, I wanted her to do it with the real figures and not a guess. That's the part I'm not proud of. Even braced for the worst, I couldn't stop doing the job right. 15 years had made it reflex, like breathing, like feeling the trigger hitch. At night I'd run the conversation I planned to have, cold and clean. I'd be polite, I'd answer her questions, and I'd let her feel exactly how little she understood about a place she was about to put in boxes. She arrived on a Tuesday. I knew the exact minute because I'd been watching the parking lot the way you watch a road for headlights when someone you're afraid of is driving in. A gray sedan. Clean. Parked in the second row, not the first, which I noticed and filed away without knowing why. She didn't hurry across the lot. She didn't dawdle either. She walked like someone who had walked into a lot of buildings she didn't yet trust. I met her at the front because Mr. Hartley asked me to, and because if I was going to dislike someone, I wanted to do it to their face. She was maybe 40, dark hair pulled back, not severe, just out of the way, a gray coat. Flat shoes, the practical kind, the kind that tells you she planned to be on her feet. She carried a leather folio under one arm and nothing else. No purse, no coffee, no phone in her hand. I had built a villain in my head over 2 weeks, a woman with a clipboard and a smile like a closing door. The woman in front of me had neither. She had a stillness instead, the kind that makes the room arrange itself around it. You're Nathan, she said. It wasn't a guess. She'd done her homework before the lot. I am. She put out her hand. Her grip was brief and exact. 3 words. A handshake, done. Mr. Hartley says you know where everything is. I know where everything is. Good. She looked past me once into the store, a quick sweep. I watched her eyes move and I swear she counted something in 3 seconds that takes me 10. The registers, the sight lines, the wide spot by the door where we'd moved the impulse rack last spring. Then her eyes came back to me, flat and unreadable, not unkind, just closed, like a ledger nobody had handed me the key to. I read the file on this location, she said. I'd like to not rely on the file. Walk me through it. Tell me what's true and what's just on paper. You want the honest version. I only want the honest version. A small pause. The other kind wastes both our time. I'll be honest with you. The way she asked me to be honest with her. Part of me wanted her to be the monster. It's easier to lose to a monster. You don't have to feel anything except wronged. But she was already not behaving like one, and that bothered me more than a clipboard ever could. There's a thing your brain does when it has already decided who someone is. I didn't have a name for it then. I learned later that people who study this call it the halo effect, except mine was the opposite kind, the dark version, where one rumor becomes the whole picture, and you read everything she does through it. She asked a clear question, and I heard a trap. She paused before answering, and I heard calculation. She didn't smile, and I heard cold, when the truth was, I had no idea what she was. I had a story about her, and I was already grading her against it. Where do you want to start? I said. The back.
Of course, the showroom.
Not the pretty part. I want to see the dock, the storage, the dead stock, the places the customers never go. That's where a store tells the truth. We walked. I led her past the paint mixer. She glanced at it and said nothing. Past the seasonal end caps where the daffodil bulb sat at $1.49, the ones I'd marked down that morning, and she stopped. She picked one up and turned the box over in her hand. "Read the back of it slowly." "These bloom early," she said. It caught me off guard. They do. They never move in time. She set it down, level edges square to the shelf. "You discount them in October, so they don't sit there reminding everyone in November." She was right. It was exactly the reason. I'd never said it out loud to a single person in 15 years, and a stranger read it off a shelf in 4 seconds. I didn't know what to do with that, so I did what I do. I kept walking and said nothing, and I let the silence be the argument it wanted to be. We reached the dock, the 38 soil bags, the cold concrete, the cardboard smell of it. She stood in the doorway for a moment and just looked, not at a list, at the room, at the loading door, the height of the stacks, the worn place on the floor where 10,000 pallet jacks had turned the same corner. Whatever she saw, she kept it behind that flat, closed face. "How long have you been here?" she asked, still looking at the room, not at me. 15 years. That made her turn, just slightly. Something moved behind her eyes and was gone before I could read it. For 1 second, she looked at me the way you look at a thing you didn't expect to find in a building like this. 15 years, she repeated. Same store. She nodded slowly. And she didn't say what people usually say. She didn't say, "Wow," or "That's loyalty," or "You must love it here." She just held my eyes for a beat longer than was comfortable, and then she looked back at the room, and whatever almost showed on her face went away again. "Okay," she said quietly, "show me the rest." "I want to tell you I saw it that morning. The thing under the stillness. The reason she parked in the second row and counted the registers in 3 seconds and read a daffodil box like a confession. I didn't. I was too busy bracing for the closer they promised me. So I led her deeper into the store I loved, past the things I'd marked down to make room for things that might not come, and I told myself I knew exactly who she was. I was wrong about her. I was wrong about almost everything. But that came later. That came on a night, with the lights off, and the garden center quiet, when she finally said the thing she'd been carrying through every aisle. For now I just walked, and she followed, and the lights flickered once more behind us, and this time I noticed she looked up. The first thing I learned about Dana Reyes was that she didn't fill silence. Everybody I knew couldn't help it. They feel a gap and they patch it. She let it sit. By the end of day 1, I'd talked more than I meant to just to make the quiet stop, and she'd watched me do it, and I knew she knew. The lights flickered around noon and I looked up. She didn't. She'd stopped noticing them already. That bothered me. The flickering. I'd lived with it so long it was almost a heartbeat. She'd been in the building 4 hours, and the place was already hers in some small way she hadn't asked for. We fell into a rhythm I hated for how easy it was. She'd come in early, earlier than me some mornings, which I didn't think was possible. She'd be at the back with a coffee from the gas station, the bad kind, leaning over a clipboard that I never once saw her write a kill order on. I'd find her by the dock and we'd start. I want to be fair to the person I was that week. I was looking for the monster. I'd promised myself the monster. So I read everything she did as evidence. She corrected me twice the first day, clipped both times. The first was over the seed rack. I'd told her we kept the slow movers up front to catch impulse buys. And she said flat, "They're not catching anything, they're collecting dust at eye level. Move them down, put the soil up." She was right. I knew she was right the second she said it. But the way she said it. No softening. No, I wonder if. Just the correction, set down on the floor between us like a tool she expected me to pick up. I picked up cold instead. I heard a woman who didn't care. The second was worse, because it was about a person. We were near the registers and Walt was on 3, ringing up a man buying a single bag of grass seed and telling him a story about his own lawn that had no ending I could see. Walt does that. The man didn't seem to mind. Nobody minds Walt. Dana watched the transaction the whole way through. Then she turned to me and said, "How long does that take, on average? A man and a bag of seed and a conversation." I felt my whole chest close. There it was. That was the question. I'd been waiting for it without knowing the shape it would take, and it took the shape of Walt, who is 60 years old and has rung this register longer than I've worked here. Let me tell you about Walt, because I need you to feel about him the way I do, the way the whole store does. Walt's been at Hartley's 26 years. He came in the year the original highway was just a 2-lane road, and the chain store out there was a cornfield. He knows every regular by their first name, and most of them by their dog's name too. He keeps butterscotch candies in his apron pocket, the gold-wrapped kind, and he gives them to kids while their parents pay, and he gives them to the parents too, the tired ones, the ones who look like they need it more than the kids do. He calls everyone chief, men, women, The UPS driver, the 7-year-old buying a goldfish net. There you go, Chief. He is slow at the register. I won't lie to you about that. He's slow because he talks. And he talks because 40 years ago his wife told him a stranger is just a friend who hasn't been bothered yet. And Walt took it as a religion. His wife passed 4 years ago. He didn't miss a shift. He came back the Monday after the funeral in his good shirt and rang up 40 customers and called every one of them Chief. And at lunch I found him in the break room not eating, just holding the sandwich, and he looked at me and said, "It's better to be here, Nathan. The house is too quiet." And then he went back out and gave a kid a butterscotch. That's Walt. And here was Dana Reyes asking me how long he took, on average. So when I said, "Where do you want to start?" to myself, the answer that came back was simple. I want to protect that old man from this woman. I want her to know he is not a number on her clipboard. What I actually said was, he takes as long as the person in front of him needs. It came out sharper than I planned. The first sharp thing I'd let her hear. She looked at me then. Really looked the way she had at the dock when I said 15 years. Something moved behind the flat surface and I couldn't read it, and I was too angry to try. "That wasn't a complaint," she said. It sounded like the start of one. A beat, the registers beeped behind us. Walt laughed at his own joke 2 lanes down. "It wasn't," she said again, and she didn't explain, and she didn't soften, and she walked toward the paint section, and I stood there with my heart going like I'd won something, except I hadn't. I'd just been rude to a woman who'd asked me a question and accepted my answer without a fight. That's the thing about deciding who someone is before you know them. You spend all your energy building a case, and they keep not showing up to the trial. I read about this later. The way I read about everything later, after it stopped being able to help me. There's a thing the brain does where you explain a stranger's actions by what kind of person they must be, and your own actions by the situation you were in. She's slow to smile, so she's cold. I'm slow to smile, but that's because I'm under pressure. People who study it call it the fundamental attribution error, which is a heavy name for a small daily cruelty. I was running it on her in real time and calling it judgment. But here's what kept happening that week, under the friction, in the cracks. She knew things she had no right to know. Day 3, we were at the dock when a delivery came in light. 2 pallets short. The driver shrugged, said it was a warehouse thing, said he'd note it. I started to wave it through because that's what we do, you note it and you move on. And Dana said without looking at the manifest, "That's not the warehouse. The yard's been double counting returns since they switched systems in August. Your last 4 deliveries were short by 2, 4, 2, and 3. It evens out on paper and disappears on the dock." The driver stared at her. I stared at her. "Call it in," she told him. "Reference the August migration. They'll find it in 20 minutes. Then to me, like it was nothing. Somebody should have caught it. The numbers were right there. The numbers were not right there. The numbers were buried in 4 weeks of delivery slips that I, the floor lead, the man who counts 38 soil bags out of habit, had signed without reading. She'd read them. In a building she'd been in for 3 days, she'd read the thing I'd stopped reading years ago. I didn't thank her. I want that on the record because it's the part I'm least proud of. I just nodded and felt the cold case I was building start to crack down one side, and I patched it because I wasn't ready to lose the monster yet. She knew the loading dock numbers cold. She knew which register ate nickels before I told her, because she'd watched the drawer counts. She knew the foot traffic by hour, the dead Tuesdays, the way Saturday morning still had a pulse if you opened the garden center on time. She knew the store the way I knew it. Worse than that, she knew it the way I used to, before I let it go soft and familiar and stopped seeing it. I'd braced for a woman with a spreadsheet who didn't understand us. She understood us better than I did, and I had no idea what to do with a fact that big. The joke happened on a Thursday. It was late, near close, and the store had emptied out the way it does, leaving that long gold light and the hum of the coolers and not much else. We were in the back, in the overstock aisle, the narrow one where 2 people can't pass without one of them turning sideways. She was checking a count against the binder. I was holding the ladder she didn't need. There was a box up high, water-stained, that had been there since before the buyout, before Frank left, possibly since the founding of the Republic. I'd been meaning to deal with it for 2 years. She looked at it. "What's in that one?" "Nobody knows," I said. "It's load-bearing. Take it down and the building comes with it." I don't know why I said it. It just came out the dry thing, the kind of line I say to myself all day, and almost never to a person. And she laughed. Not a polite laugh. Not the kind you give a man to be kind to him. A real one, short and surprised, like it got out before she could stop it. She put a hand up, not quite to her mouth, just a half cent of catching herself, and then it was gone, folded back behind the flat face, but I'd seen it. The crack went the other way that time. Not in my case against her, in her. For 1 second, in the narrow aisle in the gold light, she wasn't the closer. She was a person who'd been alone in a lot of stores at night, holding a binder, and somebody had made her laugh, and she'd let it happen before she remembered not to. We were close. The aisle made us close. I was aware of it the way you're aware of a step you didn't see in the dark. Her shoulder, the smell of the bad gas station coffee, the quiet that for once wasn't an argument. She looked at the box again. "Leave it up," she said. "I've worked in enough places that needed something holding the roof on." And she went back to the binder, and I went back to holding a ladder she didn't need, and neither of us said anything. And it was the first silence between us all week that didn't feel like a fight. I drove home that night and didn't turn the radio on. I just sat with it. The laugh, the way she'd caught herself, the way she'd said enough places, like there was a whole long road behind her of buildings that needed holding up, and she'd been the one standing under them. It scared me, honestly. It's easier to lose to a monster. I told you that already, a monster you can hate clean. But she'd laughed in a narrow aisle, and now I had to consider that the woman they sent to close my store might be a person, and a person you can't hate clean. A person you have to actually look at. So of course the next day I unsaw all of it. I unsaw it because of a door. It was Friday afternoon. She'd taken the back office, Mr. Hartley's old one, the one with the window onto the dock. I came around the corner to ask her something about the garden center order, and the door was shut. It's never shut. Hartley never shut it in 30 years. The shut door stopped me cold. And through it I heard her voice. Low, not the flat work voice, something tighter. I heard pieces. You hear pieces through a door, in your brain, which has spent all week wanting a monster, builds the rest. I know what the model says. A pause. I'm telling you the model's wrong about this one. Another pause, longer. Don't make me put it in writing, because if I put it in writing, then it's a decision, and I'm not ready to. And then quieter, almost gone. There are people in here. I stepped back from the door. I want to tell you what I heard, because what I heard and what was true were two different countries, and I lived in the wrong one for 3 more days. What I heard was a woman on the phone with corporate, arguing about the close. Don't make me put it in writing. There are people in here. I heard the closer doing her arithmetic out loud. I heard the moment before the boxes go in the back by spring. I heard exactly the kill order Kayla had promised me by the seed rack on day 1. And my whole cold case rebuilt itself in a single afternoon, every crack patched, the monster back on her feet. I went and counted the soil bags. 36 now. 2 had sold. I stood at the dock where she'd read 4 weeks of short deliveries off slips I'd ignored, and I let myself hate her again, because hating her was load-bearing too. Take it away and something came down with it. I was wrong. I need you to know I was wrong, even though I didn't know it yet. Even though I spent that whole weekend telling Kayla in the break room that I'd heard it through the door. I'd heard it with my own ears. She's going to close us. I was wrong about the door. I was wrong about the call. I was wrong about who she was talking to and what she was fighting for. The words were right and the country was wrong, and that's the worst kind of wrong. The kind where every fact lines up, and the truth is still standing on the other side of the room, waving its arms. But before all that, before I unsaw the laugh, there was one more thing that Friday, the thing I should have held on to. The thing that should have told me the door was lying. She found me at close. I was cashing out register 2, the nickel eater. She stood at the end of the lane with her folio under her arm, and she waited until I looked up. "The cashier on 3, she said. Walt." My hand stopped on the drawer. Here it comes, I thought. Friday, end of week 1, and she names the first cut, and it's the old man with the butterscotch in his apron. "What about him?" I said, flat cold. The way she'd been all week, except I was doing it on purpose now, a wall I'd built brick by brick. And she didn't say what I braced for. She didn't say his name with a line through it. She looked at me, and the flat surface had something under it I still couldn't read, and she said, 26 years. He came in when this was a 2-lane road. She paused. How many of these people would still come in if he wasn't here? Not the ones the model counts. The ones who drive past the highway store to get a bag of seed and a story. Another pause, longer than was comfortable, the kind she made you sit in. I need to know what he's worth. The real number, not the one on the clock. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because the question wasn't the question I'd built a wall against. It was the opposite of it. It was a woman asking me to help her measure a thing the spreadsheet couldn't see, and I was too busy guarding the door to hear it. Think about it, she said, and she left. I finished cashing out register 2. I locked the drawer. The lights flickered once, the way they do, and this time I was the only one in the building to see it. She'd parked in the second row again. I'd noticed that all week and never asked why. The first row by the door was for the people who run a place. She'd left it empty every single day, like she hadn't decided yet whether she belonged in it, or like she was leaving it for someone who did. I'd find out what was in that. What was in the second row and the shut door and the question about Walt that wasn't the question I'd braced for. I'd find out the whole country I'd been living in was the wrong one. But not from a door, and not from a rumor by the seed rack. I'd find out the way you find out anything real about a person. On a long night with the lights off and nobody else in the building, in the one part of the store I loved most and never told anyone, when the binder finally closed, and she said the thing she'd been carrying through every aisle since the gray sedan rolled into the second row. The inventory was that next week. Just the two of us, the garden center, and the truth she'd been holding the whole time. Inventory ran the following Thursday. And it ran the way it always did, with the lights off out front and just the work lights on in back, and nobody else in the building. The garden center is glass on 3 sides. At night it goes black and turns into a mirror, so you count yourself counting, your own reflection holding a clipboard out past the seed wall like a second person doing the same sad math. I loved that room and never told anyone. It was the one part of the store that still smelled like the reason I took the job. Wet soil and cedar and that green smell that doesn't have a name. We started at the back wall, the perennials, and we did not talk for the first hour, and for once that suited both of us fine. She counted faster than me. I'd given up pretending otherwise. She'd call a number and I'd write it, and we'd move down the bench, and the rhythm of it got into us the way rhythm does, until somewhere around the clematis I forgot to be at war. That's the thing nobody tells you about a long count at night. The building empties you out. You run out of the energy it takes to hold a grudge up. You just have your hands in the cold and the next number, and the person next to you stops being the thing you decided they were and starts being the only other warm body in a glass room full of dark. Around 10, she set the binder on the pot bench and pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes. "How long have you done this?" she asked. "The night count, by hand." "Every year I've been here, 15 of them." "You like it?" It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer it like one. "It's the only time the store's quiet enough to hear." She looked around the glass room, at the black panes with the two of us hung in them, and something in her shoulders came down half an inch, and she said, "I used to count by hand. Years ago. They make you use the scanner now. The scanner doesn't know which boxes are lying to you. The water-stained one in Overstock would lie to a scanner all day." A short breath that was almost the laugh from the aisle. "That box is going to outlive both of us." We did another bench. The geraniums, what was left of them. And then with her back to me, reaching for a flat on the high shelf, not looking at me at all, which I understand now was the only way she could have said it. She said, "I asked for this store." I wrote down a number that I'm fairly sure was wrong. "What?" "Hartley's. I asked for it, by name." She got the flat down and set it on the bench and finally turned around. "They had 3 on the list this quarter. I read the files. I picked this one. Nobody assigns you the hard one. You ask." I put the pen down. The work light hummed. Somewhere in the dark store a cooler kicked on. "You picked the store you were sent to close." "I picked the store I was sent to look at." She held my eyes. "Those aren't the same thing. They've never been the same thing. That's the part you decided about me on day 1, and I let you because correcting you costs more than it's worth most of the time. But you're up to your elbows in dirt at 10 at night, and you love this place, and I'm tired, so." She spread her hands. "I didn't come here to close it. I came here to find a reason not to. I want to be honest about what happened in me right then, because it wasn't relief. It was the floor going out. Because if she was telling the truth, then everything I'd built that week, the cold case, the door, the kill order I heard with my own ears, came down all at once, and I had nothing to stand on but the fact that I'd been wrong about a person for 2 weeks and rude to her on purpose. "The door," I said, "Friday when I heard you on the phone. I didn't even decide to say it, it just came up. Don't put it in writing, there are people in here. I heard you doing the math." She went still, and then she did something I didn't expect. She almost smiled, but it was the worst kind, the kind with no happiness in it at all. "You heard half," she said. "You always hear half and build the rest. I watched you do it all week." She leaned back against the bench. "That call, you want to know who I was fighting with?" "Corporate." "Yes." "About closing us." "No." She said it quiet and flat and final. About not closing you. The model spat out a recommendation in August. Close Hartley's by spring, redistribute to the highway store, take the write down. That's the easy number. That's the number that makes my quarter look clean and gets me a bonus and a pat on the head. Her jaw worked. I told them the model's wrong. I told them don't make me put it in writing. Because the second I file the close recommendation, it becomes real and I can't pull it back, and I'm not ready, because there are people in here. She looked at me. That's the call. You heard me trying to save you, and you went and told your friend by the seed rack that the closer was sharpening her knife. I didn't have anything. There was nothing to say that wasn't just the size of how wrong I'd been. You don't have to apologize, she said, which was somehow worse. I'd have heard the same thing. You hear a shut door in a building that's never had a shut door, you assume the worst. That's not just how it works. You explain a stranger by the worst thing the situation could mean. She picked the binder back up like she needed her hands busy. I do it too. I did it to this store before I drove out here. A dying rural box, soft numbers, a floor lead who's checked out. That's what the file said. That's what I expected to find. And I found a man who counts 38 soil bags out of habit because he can't stand to see the place slip. She didn't look up from the binder. The file was wrong about you too. We're even. The cooler hummed. Our reflections held their clipboards out in the black glass, and I understood standing there that the whole week had been two people reading each other off a file and getting it wrong. And the only thing that had cut through it was a narrow aisle, a stupid joke, and now a glass room at 10 at night with nowhere to hide. It's costing you, I said. It wasn't a guess. I could see it on her now that I'd stopped looking for the monster. The gray under her eyes, the gas station coffee at 7 in the morning because she'd been up reading slips, the fighting. It's costing you something. She was quiet for a moment. Then she set the binder down again and she told me, and she told it plain, the way she did everything. There's a deadline. End of the quarter. I have to either file the close or file a turnaround plan with numbers that hold. And the numbers are brutal, Nathan. They are genuinely brutal. This store has been bleeding slow for 3 years, and I have 11 weeks to show it can stop. She rubbed the back of her neck. And if I file the turnaround and I'm wrong, if I bet my name on this place and it goes under in a year anyway, she let that sit. Then I'm not the manager who makes the hard calls anymore. I'm the manager who got sentimental about a garden center and cost the company a write-down. That's a thing you only get to be once. After that, they stop handing you the list. So why do it? She looked at me. The flat surface was gone now. What was under it was just tired and stubborn and human. Because I've closed stores I shouldn't have. She said it like setting down something heavy she'd carried a long way. 2 of them. People think the closer is the woman who walks in and pulls the trigger and walks out clean. The 2 I think about, I fought for, both of them. I stood in a room exactly like this one and I made the case and I lost because the case wasn't good enough or the timing was bad or somebody upstairs had already decided. And I drove home and I told myself I'd tried. Her voice didn't break. It got steadier, which was worse. And then I had to come back and do the close anyway. I had to stand in the break room and watch a man who'd given 30 years find out he had 8 weeks. I did that twice. The reputation you all hung on me. The closer, that's the wins. Nobody in those 2 stores called me the closer. They called me a lot of things. None of them were that. The glass room held us. I didn't move. Those didn't make me, she said. Those broke me. And the only way I know to stop carrying them is to win one. So I read 3 files this quarter and I picked the one that reminded me of a place I lost. And I drove out to a town I'd never been to a store with a flickering light and a slow old man on register 3, and I told corporate to give me 11 weeks before they make me put anything in writing. She looked right at me. That's the closer. That's the whole story. You can keep the version you've got if it's more comfortable, but that's the true one. I thought about Walt then. I think she watched me think about him because she said it before I could. Walt stays. My chest did something complicated. There's no version of the turnaround where Walt goes, she said. I ran it. He's slow on the clock, and he's worth 4 employees the model can't see, and I built the plan to keep him, and if corporate makes his hours the price of saving the store, then I'll find the cost somewhere else, because a place that fires Walt to survive isn't worth surviving. She paused. That's not a number. That's just true. That's why you asked me what he was worth. I needed the real figure, the regulars who drive past the highway store for him. I couldn't put it in the plan as he's a good man. Corporate doesn't have a column for good man. A flicker of the dry thing, almost gone. So I needed you to help me translate him into a language they speak. That's what I was asking you Friday. You thought I was naming the first cut. She tilted her head. You braced like I'd hit him. I was trying to keep him. I sat down on an upturned crate because my legs wanted me to. There's a kind of being wrong that's just embarrassing, and there's a kind that rearranges the room, and this was the second one. Every brick I'd laid that week, I'd laid against a woman who'd driven out here carrying 2 stores she couldn't save and picked mine because it looked like a third chance. I told Kayla you were going to close us, I said, all weekend. I know, she told the floor. The floor's been looking at me like I'm here to read them their rights. She didn't sound angry. She sounded like someone reading a forecast. It's fine. I'd rather they hate me and have a store than like me and have a parking lot. That's a terrible deal you've made with yourself. It's the only one the job offers. And then lighter, almost, welcome to management. We did the next bench in silence, but the silence had changed shape entirely. It wasn't a wall anymore. It was the quiet of 2 people on the same side of a thing for the first time. Neither of them sure how to stand in it. She'd count, I'd write. Our reflections moved in the black glass like they'd finally stopped arguing. At one point our hands reached for the same flat. Hers got there first, then mine landed on top of it, and we both stopped. Not long. A second, maybe less. The cedar smell and the work light humming and her hand under mine and the whole glass room holding still around it. She didn't pull away fast. She pulled away ordinary, like nothing, and slid the flat down the bench, and we kept counting. But I felt the not nothing of it. I think she did too. We were both old enough and tired enough to step back from a thing in a glass room at midnight that neither of us could afford to start. So we stepped back. We counted geraniums instead, and it was the loudest stepping back I've ever been part of. The numbers really are brutal, she said. Later, near the end, not looking up. I'm not going to pretend they aren't. We might do all this right and still lose. I know. You should know what you're signing up for if you're in. I looked at the glass room. The room I loved and never told anyone I loved. 2 weeks ago I was sure it was already gone, a thing to be mourned, boxes in the back by spring. Now there was a tired, stubborn woman betting her whole name on keeping it open, and she'd just told me I could be on the other side of that. I'm in, I said. She nodded once. Didn't make it a moment, that wasn't her. Good. Then starting tomorrow you stop counting 38 soil bags out of grief and start counting them like a man trying to win a beat. And you talk to Walt. Not about the cuts, about the regulars. I need names. I need the man who drives 11 miles for a story written down in a language corporate respects. 11 weeks, I said. 11 weeks. She closed the binder. The sound of it in that glass room was very final, and the first one's already gone. We locked up near 1 in the morning. She walked to the second row, to the spot she'd parked in every day, the one away from the door, and I finally understood that too. She hadn't taken the first row because she hadn't earned this store yet. In her own head, she was still a manager who might have to close it, and you don't park by the door of a place you might have to kill. She was leaving the good spot for whoever turned out to deserve it, maybe me, maybe her, if she won. She got in the gray sedan, rolled the window down.
Nathan.
The work lights were off now, just the lot lights, and her face half in them. Thank you for the laugh. Last week, in the aisle. A pause. I hadn't in a while, it mattered more than it should have. Then she rolled the window up and pulled out of the second row, and I stood in the empty lot with the smell of cedar still on my hands, and 11 weeks in front of me, and the whole ruined map of who I'd thought she was lying on the ground where I'd dropped it. I should have felt lighter. I'd been handed an ally and a fighting chance and the truth, all in one night. What I felt instead was the size of what came next, because being right about her didn't save the store. Knowing she'd asked for us didn't make the numbers any softer. There was still a deadline and a model that wanted us dead, and somewhere up the chain a person with a pen who didn't care how Walt called everyone chief. The easy part was over. The easy part was hating her. Now we had 11 weeks to do the hard thing, the thing that costs, and I didn't yet understand how much it would cost, or who'd have to pay it, or that the bill, when it came, would land on the one man in the building neither of us was willing to lose. The bill came in week 9, and it came the way real bills do, not with a knife but with an email. Corporate had read her turnaround plan. They liked the numbers. They were prepared to give Hartley's its year. There was one condition near the bottom, in the language they use when they want a thing to sound small. Labor cost on the plan ran 2 points over their threshold. To clear it, the store would need to shed roughly 30 weekly hours by spring. The email did not say Walt. The email never says the name. But there's only one person on that floor whose hours cut. Don't take a register down with them. And Dana and I both knew it the second we read it, standing at the office computer at 7 in the morning. Her gas station coffee going cold on the desk between us. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she said, "There it is. There it is." They gave me the store. She read the line again like it might change. And they want me to pay for it with him. I'd known this woman 9 weeks by then. I'd watched her count by hand and fight a model and leave the good parking spot empty. I thought I knew how she'd take a hit. I was wrong about that too. She didn't get hard. She got quiet in a way that was worse. The quiet of someone doing math she'd before and hated the answer to both times. I can find it somewhere else, she said. The 30 hours. I can cut my own seasonal budget. I can take it out of the back office. I can. She stopped. I can't. I've already run it 11 ways. There's no 30 hours in this store that doesn't come out of his shifts or doesn't take the place until the next morning. I built it too tight. I built it to win and I left no room to be kind. So, we don't take it out of him. Then the plan dies and the store closes in spring and he loses everything instead of some of it. She looked at me. That's the trap, Nathan. That's the whole trap. The humane thing and the survivable thing are standing on opposite sides of the room and the job makes you pick. I want to tell you I had something wise. I didn't. What I had was 15 years on that floor and a thing I'd been swallowing for 9 weeks, and it came up the way the truth came up in that glass room, without me deciding to let it. Cut mine, I said. She blinked. What? My hours. I'm full-time. I'm 38 a week. You don't need a floor lead at 38 if the manager's actually on the floor, and you're out there more than any of them ever were. The words kept coming and I let them. Drop me to part-time. Move me to 4 days. That's your 30 hours and then some, and it doesn't touch a register and it doesn't touch Walt. That's your income. I know what it is. Nathan. She set the coffee down hard. You have a mortgage. You told me. You've got 15 years in this building and a pension that vests on full-time hours, and I am not letting you set yourself on fire to keep a 60-year-old cashier in a job you're not even sure I can save past next winter. And there it was, the thing she'd built, same as me. She'd built a wall out of being the one who carries it alone. I'd built mine out of being content, dependable, Nathan the man who's fine, who doesn't want anything, who counts soil bags and goes home. 2 people in an office at 7 in the morning, each one sure the cost belonged to them and nobody else. So I dropped the wall, all of it. Because I was tired of standing behind it, and because she'd dropped hers in the glass room first, and somebody had to be brave back. I'm not doing it for Walt, I said. She went still. I mean, I am. He stays no matter what. You decided that, and I'd have decided it with you. But that's not why I just offered you my paycheck without thinking about it. My voice wasn't steady, and I let it not be steady. I'm doing it because for 9 weeks I've watched you fight for a building I'd already buried. And somewhere in there I stopped grieving the store and started. I don't have a clean word for it. I look forward to 7 in the morning now. I look forward to your terrible coffee, and you telling me I'm counting wrong. I haven't looked forward to anything in this place in years, and you walked in and I called you the closer and decided to hate you on a Tuesday. And I was so far wrong it rearranged the room. I made myself hold her eyes. I'm not content, Dana. I told everybody I was content. I've been saying it so long I believed it. I'm not. I want this store to make it, and I want Walt to keep his register, and I want to still be standing in that garden center at midnight a year from now. And I want you to be the one standing in it with me. That's the truth. You can keep the comfortable version of me if it's easier. But that's the real one. The office was very quiet. Out front a delivery truck backed up to the dock, beeping, the most ordinary sound in the world. She looked at me for a long time, not the flat look. The other one, the tired, stubborn human one she'd shown me in the glass. You picked a hell of a morning, she said. You filed a turnaround plan you might lose your name on. I figured honesty was in the air. Something moved at the corner of her mouth. Not the dry thing. Warmer. I'm not taking your hours, she said. Sit down. We're going to find the 30 somewhere that doesn't burn either of us, and we're going to do it right now, because the deadline's in 2 weeks, and I'm done losing men I respect to a spreadsheet. She pulled the second chair around. Both of you stay. That's the plan. Now help me make the plan true. So we made it true. It took the rest of that week and most of the next. We cut the store's Sunday hours back, the slow ones nobody came for anyway, and that bought 12. We moved Walt off the clock for 2 hours a day and onto the regular contact list, the senior delivery runs, and the call-ahead orders for the old farmers who couldn't get in, which the highway store didn't offer and couldn't match. And that wasn't a cut at all. That was Walt doing the one thing only Walt could do. Paid the same, and it closed the rest of the gap. She wrote it up so corporate read it as efficiency. What it actually was a store rearranging itself around the worth of one man, instead of removing him to fit the math. I'd spent 9 weeks trying to translate Walt into a language the spreadsheet respected. Turned out the trick wasn't translating him. It was building the store, so the spreadsheet had to keep him to get what it wanted. We didn't tell Walt the half of it. You don't tell a man like that he was almost the line item. We told him the senior runs were his now, his name on them, his route. He took it the way he took everything, like it was no large thing and also like it was everything, and the next morning he loaded his truck with call-ahead orders and drove out to the farms in his cardigan. And old men who'd driven 11 miles past the highway store for 15 years got their seed and their soil brought to their door by the one person at Hartley's who knew their first names and their wives' names, and which of them had buried a wife that winter. The model never had a column for that. We just stopped asking it to. We built the column ourselves and put Walt in it where he'd always belonged. The plan cleared. Corporate signed the year. There was no celebration, no banner, none of the things a fairy tale would hang on the moment. There was an email that said approved, and Dana read it twice the way she read everything. Twice, and then she closed the laptop and looked at me and said, "We're not safe, we bought a year. The numbers are still hard and a year goes fast." A pause. "But we're not closing in spring. Walt's not finding out he's got 8 weeks. We did that part." And for her, that close to glad, that was a parade. It was the following Thursday that it landed for good, the way these things land, not in the office but in the place that had started it. Inventory night again. The garden center glass gone black on 3 sides. The 2 of us hung in it with our clipboards out past the seed wall, the cedar and the wet soil smell and the work light humming. Same room, different 2 people standing in it, or maybe the same 2, finally telling the truth about who they were. We counted the perennials first, like before. She still counted faster. I'd stopped pretending to mind. Somewhere around the clematis, the spot where 9 weeks ago I'd forgotten to be at war, she set the binder down on the potting bench and didn't pick it back up. "I parked in the first row today," she said, not looking at me, looking at the black glass and the 2 of us in it. I didn't say anything. I knew what it meant. She'd left that spot empty for 9 weeks because in her own head she was still a manager who might have to kill the place, and you don't park by the door of a store you might have to close. The first row was for whoever turned out to deserve it. "You earned it," I said. "We earned it." She turned around. The flat surface was nowhere on her now. Just the tired, stubborn woman who'd driven out here carrying 2 stores she couldn't save and bet her whole name on a third. "I told you in this room I needed to win one, to stop carrying the other 2. Her voice was low and the glass quiet. "I won one, and it's not the win I thought I came for." Our hands had reached for the same flat once, 9 weeks back, and we'd both stepped away ordinary, because we were old enough and tired enough not to start a thing in a glass room at midnight that we couldn't afford. We weren't stepping away tonight. She crossed the small distance between the benches, and I met her. And there in the black glass, with the cedar smell and the seed wall and the whole quiet store, holding still around us, the 2 reflections that had spent a season arguing finally stopped. She put her hand flat against my chest, not pushing, just there, the way you touch a thing to be sure it's real. I put mine over it. The work light hummed. Outside, the lot lights buzzed against the dark. We didn't make a speech. Neither of us was built for speeches. We just stood in the room I'd loved, and never told anyone I loved, except now there was someone in it who'd loved it enough to fight for it, and I'd told her, and she'd stayed. "The numbers are still hard," she said into my shoulder. Of course she did. That was her. "I know. We might do everything right and still lose it next year." "I know that too." She pulled back just enough to look at me. "You're in anyway." "I've been in since the aisle," I said. "I just didn't have the sense to know it." We locked up near 1 in the morning, same as before. She walked to the first row this time, to the spot by the door, and got in the gray sedan and rolled the window down. The lot lights caught her face the way they had 9 weeks back, when she'd thanked me for a laugh she hadn't expected. "Nathan." "Yeah. Walt called me chief today," she said. "First time. Drove up from the senior runs and got me through the truck window and drove off." Like she still couldn't account for it. Took him 11 weeks. I had to nearly cost him his job and then save it without him knowing, to earn the same thing you all decided he hands out to strangers. A breath. I think I'll remember that longer than the email. Then she rolled the window up and pulled out of the first row, where she'd finally let herself park, and I stood in the empty lot with the smell of cedar on my hands, and a year in front of us that we still might lose. And for once, I wasn't bracing for the worst thing the situation could mean. I'd done enough of that to last me. I'd built a whole monster out of a shut door and a phone call I half heard. And the monster had turned out to be a tired woman trying to keep a slow old man in a cardigan from finding out he was a line item. I'd had it exactly backward, start to finish, The way I think most of us have most people exactly backward, most of the time. I keep landing on the same thought. Driving home from that lot, we almost never meet the person. We meet the warning about the person. Somebody tells us she's the closer, and we decide. The file says he's slow, and we decide. The room goes quiet, and we read the worst of it, and build a whole human out of the reading. And we're so sure. I was so sure. I spent 2 weeks being rude on purpose to the best thing that ever walked into that store, because of who somebody told me she was before she'd lifted a single soil bag. So I'll leave you with the question I can't stop asking myself. The next time someone hands you the warning before you've seen the work, how sure are you, really, that you're meeting the person and not just the story you were handed about them? If a quiet one like this stayed with you, there are more on the channel. I'll see you in the garden center, near close, where the glass goes black and you can finally hear the place.